Don't know if you can read it from the back, but in 1886, roughly the same year that the photo was taken, Mary Read Soule was 43. That woman, who is labeled Mary Soule, is not 43. Maybe she's 60-something, but she's not 43. That's not Aunt Mary Soule. So there's a piece of my mystery. You know, why did my father-in-law think it was? Where did he get his information? But I'm going to continue looking at John Payson Soule. I find out that he is a photographer, that he was famous for his stereographs. He also did a number of Civil War photos also. As I followed John Payson Soule, now I'm going to tell you a little story here. I've done a lot of research projects with my kids, and their teachers always say, don't use Wikipedia. Don't use Wikipedia as a source. Honestly, I love Wikipedia. It's a great, quick first impression about a topic. And if the entry was done right, there are sources to the entry. Then you follow the sources of the source. And when you follow those sources, those are original sources, and you can believe those. So you just take it a step further. So as I was looking at John Payson Soule's Wikipedia entry and learning more about him, I looked at the sources. One of them was an entry in the University of Washington State Special Collection. And in that special collection was an entire inventory of his photographs, including number 7, Mrs. Mary Soule and her sister, Mrs. McAlpin. And number 8, Mrs. McAlpin by herself in the yard. I was on the phone to the University of Washington Special Collection immediately, trying to figure out how can I get copies of these photos. And about a month later, they arrived, beautiful pictures. That started the next step. Okay, now I've got history photos. Can I match them to anybody? One of the women, so I started with this woman, Mrs. McAlpin, in the yard by herself. I did that because now I have a name for that face. And when I get to the next picture that has both Mary and Mrs. McAlpin, I know which one is Mrs. McAlpin and which one's Mary. So I pulled this one out of the backyard. This is Mrs. Carrie Reed McAlpin. And I'm now going to compare it to my photos. I'm at about a 75–80% confidence level that this is the same woman. There's a lot of similarities. There's things that aren't quite the same. Obviously, she changed her hairdo. These photos from these photos from University of Washington are roughly 1898. So we're looking at about 15-year difference. So the age is appropriate. But again, like I said, I'm about 75% positive. It could be that the woman on the bottom here is just another Reed sister. There's enough resemblance that it could be just another Reed sister and not Carrie. But as far as, until I can be disproved in my notes, I'm probably going to say that that is 75% chance that's Carrie. Now, the other photo that I got standing in front of the house is Mary Read Soule. And I'm going to compare her to the other unknown friend, and she must like that side of her face for getting, she has a certain profile she likes to display. This, I am 100% sure that the unknown friend in the photo is actually Mary Read Soule. So now I know who really is Aunt Mary Soule. Take the information that we learned, take it back to your photos. Now, when I take a scan of a photo, I put as much information into the title of the photo as I can. And there are hidden fields of every photo on your computer that you can add text to that photo. So in that text of this photo, I said, that's Mary Read at the end. There's a good chance that the other unknown friend is really Carrie Reed. And now that I've got a better picture, a better understanding of this photo, I'm saying to myself, one theory that makes sense is this is a complete family portrait. We've got Margaret Reed, Carrie Reed, Mary Reed. So the older woman has got to be, based on her location and who else is in the photo, this has got to be her mother, Caroline Matthew Reed. I have no way to prove it exactly, but it's a theory that I have until proven otherwise. And I'll put all that into my notes. And if I ever get any more information, if I ever get another photo of Caroline Matthews Reed, I'll be able to say, okay, go back to my notes. I think this is her. I still don't know who the gentleman is. It's not Frank Reed. There is no Frank Reed. It more than likely, I'm looking at his eyes. He's got those dark, brooding eyes, similar to Margaret and the mother. Relation, probably. Which brother? I may never know. I have researched further into the family. What I like to do is try to drill down to the living relatives and see if they'll have anything. I have yet to get to a living Reed relative. I did have an opportunity late last year to actually test out a theory about the location. So my theory about the location is that it's in the backyard of William's house on Mass Ave in Arlington. The house still exists. Unfortunately, the backyard no longer exists. They actually built a house in the backyard. So I went there. I had these photos in my hand. I was trying to look for that architecture. It's very unique. So I'm looking in the backyard. I'm looking through the yard. I'm looking at the houses behind, around. I'm trying to figure out the angle of the photograph. I went around to the other side of the street, see if I could see similar architecture. I was just about ready to give up when I realized, well, maybe my assumption is wrong. Maybe I'm not looking into the yard. Maybe I'm looking out of the yard. I turned around, and across the street was this house. Still standing there. I'm lucky that 120 years later, that house, both houses are still standing, and that they haven't put vinyl all over it and changed the appearance. But now I can guarantee, not only do I know, yes, that photo was taken 1885, I know exactly where it was taken. I know what angle it was taken from. So it is very exciting to find that. Now, I'm going to take this case study in a slightly different direction. This is the Schulz family in St. Louis. And big family. If I knew nothing about this, again, we've got an older couple in the middle. And immediately you might say, these are all their kids. But if you look just to the left, you'll see a man in a bowler. And you can't quite see it, but they're holding hands. So there is some sort of a relationship between those two. You need to make connections. So this case study, I'm going to talk about making connections, using social networks, using any kind of a network, any kind of an extra type of way to find people that will help you with your photos. So as I traversed, as you're doing just regular research, and I'll give you a hint, that family is my family. As I'm doing research on the Schulz family, you hit message boards, you see names. Many times it's just like a username. Sometimes you can see an email address. And as you're working on Ancestry or RootsWeb, there'll always be a member, a way to connect to that member. On RootsWeb, there's always an email address. What I did was I found this other researcher named Laura Schulz. She's doing almost the same research I'm doing. She's got half the picture of what the family looks like. I've got the other half of the picture. I know some of it. She knows some of it. I got to get in touch with this person to find out more about the family and potentially get more photographs. So using her Roots Web post, I've got her email address. I took her email address and I put it into Facebook. So if you've got someone's email address, put it into Facebook. Get on Facebook if you can. Now I see there's pros and cons to any kind of a social network. The nice thing about Facebook, and I use Facebook for primarily two things: to connect to family and to connect to genealogy people. That's it. So I don't connect to people at work, and I don't connect to the all over the place, and I don't connect to anybody I don't know. And I've locked it down in such a way that they only can see what I want them to see. So there are tools within Facebook to keep it very narrow, keep it very safe. The reason I use Facebook is that there are 600 million members. It is a tool set to finding people. It's in some ways it's a connected network of people. So if you find an individual, more than likely, they're going to be friends with other family. So then you can find other family and go to them and find, I'll get there. So I took her email address, and the first thing I did is I sent her an email. Hi, I introduced myself. I'm doing Schulz research. I'd like to connect, get more information from you. Straight email, no response. So I plugged her name into Facebook. I found her, and I said, let's be friends. And I sent her another message. Nothing. Okay. All right. One of the techniques I want to show you is I can now go to her friends. Typically, unless you really, really lock it down, Facebook will show you friends of friends or friends of an individual. So I looked at all of her friends, and I specifically sorted on just the people who might be named Schulz. And I find Tracy Schulz Horace, and I find Stephen E. Schulz, and she's in the picture, so that's got to be her husband. So he's the real Schulz, and she's married in. But if she's not going to respond to me, then probably he's not going to respond to me. So I picked on Tracy. And I went to her Facebook page, and I sent her a friend message, and I told her what I was looking at. And I know that I know exactly how Tracy was related to Stephen and Laura, because Laura had published enough of her genealogies that I could see the connection. That I've got a great source right here. So Tracy friended me immediately, very excited, and she put me in contact with her Aunt Barbara, who was doing genealogy. Boom, boom, boom. Now, I've done this same kind of technique of mining Facebook with as many distant cousins as I can find. Back around 1990, I had sat on the phone with a distant cousin in St. Louis on a Scottish side, and we had talked, and I'd written down a bunch of notes, and I lost contact with this person. She passed away. When Facebook came out, I took all the youngest names from the genealogy, plug them into Facebook, and was able to then reconnect with the families. It's a great way of making, I mean, people today use it to just reconnect with people from high school, reconnect with family. It's if anything, it's a great tool to find people that are living. Okay. Now, what I had on the family was a number of labeled photos. Barbara sent me a number of labeled and unlabeled photos, very centric around her side of the Schulz family, her father, her grandfather. But then she sent me the one I showed you first, this Rosetta Stone of the family.